At exactly 0847 hours on the morning of April 26, 2026, inside a declared Israeli security zone in the southern Lebanese town of Taibeh, a four-man Israeli tank crew from the 7th Armored Brigade climbed out of their Merkava Mark IV to conduct a field repair on a damaged track section. The ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah had technically been in effect since April 16th. The morning air was quiet. No outgoing rocket fire, no artillery, no radar warnings, no signal intercept. The Israeli electronic warfare suite mounted on the armored vehicle showed nothing. The sky was empty. And then the drone arrived, and no one saw it coming because it emitted absolutely nothing that any sensor in the Israeli arsenal was designed to detect. The first indication that something was in the air came from the naked eye of a soldier who glimpsed a shadow. A small quadcopter, no larger than a pizza box, skimming just above the rooftops of the bombed-out buildings at the edge of the road, navigating the rubble with fluid precision, guided by an operator watching a crystal-clear first-person video feed from a kilometer away. The drone was a fiber-optic FPV weapon, an off-the-shelf civilian quadcopter, modified in a Hezbollah workshop in the Bekaa Valley, and mated to a PG-7 anti-armor shaped charge salvaged from a rocket-propelled grenade round. Its guidance system did not use radio frequencies. It did not use GPS. It did not use Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or any electromagnetic signal whatsoever. Instead, it trailed a single thread of fiber optic cable behind it as it flew, a spool unwinding in real time, transmitting the pilot's control inputs and the drone's camera feed through pulses of light moving through glass, completely invisible to the AN/ALQ-99 jamming suites, the Trophy active protection systems, the Spike NLOS fire control radars, and the multi-billion-dollar electronic warfare architecture that Israel had spent decades building to dominate this exact battle space. Every countermeasure Israel had was built to fight a signal. This weapon had none. Sergeant Idan Fuchs, 19 years old, was killed on impact. 6 other soldiers were wounded, 4 of them seriously. An Israeli Air Force Black Hawk medical evacuation helicopter was scrambled immediately from a forward operating base 8 kilometers to the south. As the Black Hawk descended toward the casualty site, Hezbollah launched a second drone, then a third. One of them detonated just meters from the rotor disc of the helicopter, close enough to shatter the crew's composure and force the pilot into an emergency evasive climb. Soldiers on the ground, their electronic warfare systems useless against an unjammable weapon, did the only thing left to do. They aimed their M16 rifles at the sky and opened fire. The world's most technologically sophisticated ground force was pointing assault rifles at quadcopters and losing. This was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a battlefield shift that had been building for months, that the Israel Defense Forces had failed to counter despite watching the identical technology reshape the war in Ukraine since the spring of 2024. The IDF had watched Russian and Ukrainian operators deploy fiber-optic FPV drones against armored columns for nearly 2 years. They had analyzed the footage, written the reports, briefed the generals. And then, on April 11, 2026, as a Hezbollah drone slammed directly into the turret of an Israeli Merkava tank in Maze al-Jabal, the explosion captured in clinical, high-definition FPV footage that Hezbollah immediately published on Telegram. The IDF's own Defense Ministry Directorate of Defense Research and Development issued a public emergency call for solutions to the fiber-optic drone threat. Nearly 2 years after these systems first appeared in Ukraine, weeks after they had already started killing Israeli soldiers in Lebanon, the request for bids read like a unit discovering it needed body armor after the shooting had already started. The tactical geometry of the threat was devastating. Unlike rockets or anti-tank guided missiles, which have minimum launch ranges and give target acquisition systems time to react, an FPV drone can be launched from a basement window in a village 15 kilometers inside Lebanese territory and thread itself through a canyon of rubble, following a road, banking around a corner, hugging the ground beneath radar coverage, until it arrives at an Israeli armored position with no more warning than a shadow. The operator sees everything in real time. The drone sees nothing that can be used to locate the operator. No radio frequency emission, no GPS ping, no thermal bloom from a rocket motor. The fiber optic cable connecting the drone to its controller is thinner than a human hair and weighs almost nothing. It is, in the assessment of senior researcher Yehoshua Kaliski at Israel's Institute for National Security Studies, entirely immune to communication jamming, and in the absence of any electronic signature, impossible to discover the launch location. The Israeli Air Force, which can destroy a Hamas command post in Gaza using a loitering munition within 60 seconds of a target being designated, cannot find a man sitting in a basement holding a game controller and watching a video screen. Simultaneously, the cost calculus was catastrophic for Israel and liberating for Hezbollah. A Merkava Mark IV costs approximately $6 million. Its trophy active protection system, designed to intercept anti-tank missiles and rocket-propelled grenades by detonating them in mid-flight with a radar-triggered blast, can defeat a Kornet ATGM traveling at 300 meters per second. It cannot defeat an object moving at 30 kilometers per hour that emits no radar return and generates no exhaust signature. 1 kilometer of fiber optic cable, purchased in bulk from a civilian electronics supplier in China, costs approximately $30. The drone itself, a modified DJI-class quadcopter mated to a repurposed rocket warhead, costs under $500 when assembled in volume in a Hezbollah workshop. For every $6 million Israeli tank that a $500 drone destroys, Hezbollah has achieved a 12,000 to 1 exchange ratio on hardware alone. This is not a tactical advantage. This is an existential asymmetry that directly threatens Israel's ability to maintain its ground occupation of southern Lebanon, which it declared in March 2026 would extend to the Litani River and be held indefinitely as a security buffer zone. The scale of Hezbollah's drone campaign in the first 2 weeks of May 2026 made the numbers undeniable. Israeli military sources confirmed dozens of drone-related casualties across the southern Lebanon front. The Lebanese towns of Bint Jbeil, Qiyam, Hula, Ter Harfa, Der Sirian, Bayada, and Nakora all became named coordinates in Hezbollah's FPV targeting library. Merkava tanks, M113 armored personnel carriers, M548 cargo carriers, Humvee trucks, and military bulldozers were all struck on camera. The IDF's tactical response, stretching physical netting over armored positions, hanging mesh across window frames, ordering soldiers to stay inside vehicles whenever possible, looked, to the officers who implemented it, like the defensive innovations of a force that had run out of better ideas. There isn't much to do about it, one Israeli brigade commander told a military correspondent in a statement that was damning in its brevity. The briefing issued to frontline units amounted to, "Be alert, and if you spot a drone, shoot at it." At the strategic level, the fiber optic drone campaign was dismantling the foundational assumption of Israel's Lebanon strategy. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had declared in March that the IDF would occupy a buffer zone in southern Lebanon to ensure that Hezbollah could never again mass forces near the Israeli border. The zone required Israeli ground troops to hold territory inside Lebanon indefinitely, to man checkpoints, patrol roads, and maintain fire control positions across dozens of southern Lebanese villages. Every one of those positions was now a potential target for a $500 guided weapon that Israeli technology could not stop. The IDF had spent 45 years and hundreds of billions of dollars building the most sophisticated air defense architecture in the Middle East, from Iron Dome to David's Sling to Arrow 3, layered systems capable of intercepting ballistic missiles launched from Iran 1,200 kilometers away. All of that capability was completely irrelevant to an adversary who had simply gone below the radar floor, below the intercept envelope, below the minimum engagement range of every system in the order of battle, and attacked with something that cost less than a used motorcycle. At 09:31 hours on May 10, 2026, the worst single day of the Lebanon war since the formal ceasefire began on April 16th, Israeli airstrikes across southern Lebanon, the Bekaa Valley, and the southern suburbs of Beirut killed 51 people in a 24-hour period, according to the Lebanese Health Ministry. The IDF said it was targeting Hezbollah drone storage facilities, command nodes, and fiber optic cable manufacturing workshops. Simultaneously, Hezbollah announced that in the preceding 24 hours alone, it had conducted 24 separate FPV drone attacks against Israeli military positions, striking troop concentrations, Merkava tanks, bulldozers, and newly established command centers across the front. Every Hezbollah strike video was published within hours. Every video showed something that looked like a video game. A first-person view through the drone's camera, crosshairs centering on an Israeli vehicle, and then the clean, violent resolution of a shaped charge detonating against armor plate. The propaganda value was incalculable. For every $50 billion that the United States had given Israel in military assistance since October 2023, Hezbollah was publishing evidence that a $500 drone assembled in a basement could defeat it. The IDF's technology gap was not a secret. On April 11th, the Defense Ministry had publicly issued an emergency request for information to the Israeli defense industry, asking for additional capabilities to address this threat, and calling for innovative and mature technologies, language that, translated from bureaucratic into plain English, meant, "We do not currently have a solution, and we need one immediately." Military correspondent Emmanuel Fabian of the Times of Israel noted the timeline with barely concealed astonishment. The public call for solutions came nearly 2 years after fiber optic FPV drones first surfaced on the Ukrainian battlefield, and weeks after they had already been killing IDF soldiers in Lebanon. The Israeli defense industry, home to Rafael Advanced Defense Systems, Elbit Systems, and IAI, companies that had pioneered active protection and loitering munitions for decades, had simply not seen the threat coming fast enough. Not because the technology was hidden, but because the leap from Ukraine to Lebanon had happened faster than any institutional procurement cycle could match. As of May 14th, the IDF announced that it was deploying prototype counter-drone netting systems to forward positions in southern Lebanon, alongside laser-based micro-intercept platforms designed to destroy small UAVs at ranges under 500 meters. Israeli engineers were simultaneously reverse engineering captured Hezbollah fiber optic drones, some seized intact from Hezbollah caches in the villages of Bint Jabil and Khiam, to understand the cable specifications, control latency, and battery architecture. The goal: develop an acoustic and optical detection system that could locate an incoming FPV drone by its rotor noise and visual profile in the final 10 seconds of its attack run, cueing an autonomous shotgun blast countermeasure to destroy it before it reached its target. The timeline for deployment? 6 to 12 months, according to defense industry sources. The timeline of the conflict? Now. On May 14th and 15th, delegations from Israel and Lebanon sat down in Washington, D.C. for 2 days of intensive peace talks brokered by the United States State Department. The agenda: a comprehensive security agreement that would formally end the 2026 Lebanon war, establish permanent buffer arrangements, and address the disarmament of Hezbollah's remaining military infrastructure. The Israeli negotiating position, according to senior government sources, included a demand that Hezbollah surrender all remaining missile stocks, all drone manufacturing capability, and all fiber optic guided munitions. A demand that Hezbollah, which was not included in the Lebanese government delegation, and which had just demonstrated that its $500 drones were defeating Israeli armor in real time, had no incentive whatsoever to accept. Because the lessons of southern Lebanon in May 2026 were not lessons about the outcome of a specific battle. They were lessons about the future geometry of warfare between a conventional military power and a non-state actor that had studied the Ukraine war, learned the right lessons faster than its adversary, and adapted at a speed that institutional procurement cycles cannot match. Hezbollah had taken the most advanced ground force in the Middle East, a military that had pioneered the use of precision strikes, network-centric warfare, and active protection systems, and rendered its most capable armored platforms vulnerable to a weapon that any competent technician could assemble from parts ordered online. The Israeli soldiers hanging nets over their tank hatches in the ruins of Bint Jbeil were not losing a battle. They were marking the end of an era. The era in which technological superiority guaranteed battlefield dominance. The era in which the side with the most sophisticated electronic warfare suite controlled the airspace above a contested town. That era ended not with a hypersonic missile or a quantum computing cyber attack, but with a spool of fiber optic cable, a $30 drone, and a shape charge that cost less than a tank of gasoline. What do you think? Can any military in the world develop a systematic answer to fiber optic guided drones before they reshape every future ground war on the planet? Leave your answer below. Because Hezbollah already sent the design files to every Iran-backed militia from Baghdad to Sana'a. And the next army that finds itself pointing rifles at the sky might not be Israel. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never mistake the complexity of a weapon for the measure of its danger. Sometimes the most lethal thing on the battlefield costs $500 and fits in a backpack.